This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. Between two-factor authentication, strong passwords, and a VPN, you try to be in control of how your info is protected. But many other places also have it, and they might not be as careful. That's why LifeLock monitors hundreds of millions of data points a second for threats. If your identity is stolen, they'll fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast for 40% off. Terms apply.
Choice Hotels get you more for your money so you can maximize any road trip. Let's get real close to hear the maximum sizzle of Comfort Inn's free hot breakfast. Maximized. Check into more. Book direct at choicehotels.com.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Visit Progressive.com to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary, not available in all states or situations.
Mic check. 1, 2. Are we recording? Hi, I'm Michelle Bernstein, an award-winning chef, restaurateur, and mom. I have a lot on my plate, including my psoriatic arthritis symptoms. That's why I was prescribed Cosentyx. It helps me move better.
Cosentyx secukinumab is prescribed for people 2 years of age and older with active psoriatic arthritis. Don't use if you're allergic to Cosentyx. Before starting, get checked for tuberculosis. An increased risk of infections and lowered ability to fight them may occur, like tuberculosis or other serious bacterial, fungal, or viral infections. Some are fatal. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms like fevers, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough, had a vaccine or plan to, or if inflammatory bowel disease symptoms develop or worsen. Serious allergic reactions and severe eczema-like skin reactions may occur. Learn more at 1-844-COSENTYX or Cosentyx.com.
Ask your rheumatologist about Cosentyx.
Welcome back to another episode of The Edge. This is episode 8. I'm here with my esteemed co-host, Sam Finkel. Got back from Europe, so I can't say I completely got away from football with the time zone changes. It kind of had me up in the middle of the night, so you can guess what I was researching. But how have you been in this hiatus?
Yeah, I've been good. I mean, listen, you were gone, and the second you left, you were still tweeting as pretty much consistently as possible. So, I think that everyone who listens to these kind of got a little spoiled, and I'm glad you came through for them still. But I've been good. I've been doing a lot of different things in my professional life that have taken a lot of time. So it was a good, little break. So.
Yeah, and I'm definitely guilty of that. So that I don't, you try to get away, but you can never truly get away. Happy to be back though. For this episode, we just want to open up the floor to all our fans and the audience. One of the goals of ours is, yes, we are an Eagles podcast, but we want to be able to appeal kind of to the sensibilities of football fans in general. Any team that you're a fan of, I think we kind of have that approach where it's, a lot of the information we're putting out applies to a lot of different teams. And so I think that's going to kind of be a push for us going forward. So if you guys do have friends, family members, whoever who are in different cities, fans of other teams, shoot them on over. And we're going to definitely be inclusive here. Now, I can't speak for our other audience. If they want to give you guys the business while you're there in the chat, that's out of our hands. But I just want to extend that invitation.
Wait, Eric, are you saying that Eagles fans have a reputation?
I actually think it's overblown. Like, do I recommend sitting in the the upper level of the link wearing a Giants uniform? Absolutely not. But if you really level with our fan base, I think you'll realize that they're just passionate, and yeah, they'll like to. There's a lot of heckling, but it's all in good fun, and overall I don't think we have like evil fan base or anything like that.
No, I agree, and I will say our reputation right now is Super Bowl champions, so I think that's a pretty good place to sit.
So if you're on YouTube or on Twitter, we're just taking live questions. We do have some topics queued up while we're waiting for some of those questions to kind of filter in. So, Sam, did you want to kind of kick those off?
Yeah. So let's first talk about some big stuff that's happening around the league. I think notably something that kind of touches on what we talk about is what's going on with the second round contracts in this year's draft. So basically, the Texans did something somewhat unprecedented when they awarded Higgins a fully guaranteed contract, which was the first ever for an NFL draft pick in the second round or later. And what that has done is it created a freeze around the league because agents and players want to get these guarantees because now there's precedent for it. And so what you've seen is a lot of these second round picks not signing.
Yeah, and to my understanding, prior to this, it was like 90+% guaranteed, and I think they've just progressively been moving up, and they're at the point now where they're like, let's just fully guarantee this. Now, personally, what I expected is that maybe that the top 10 or potentially top half of the second round would get the fully guaranteed, and then as it got towards the end of that round, the teams would kind of refute that a bit. But it does seem like, there's some other rumblings going wrong in the NFL, and I think maybe they're striking while the kettle's hot. So the one player that I remember is Alfred Collins, and his fourth year is only 40% guaranteed, which that's not looking very good because every single other player has been fully guaranteed. Eagles fans will know Makuba is yet to sign unless it's happened in the last hour and I don't know about it. So I'm sure that's what he's looking for, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if Howie is driving a hard bargain on that. Do you have any quick predictions on if he will get that full guarantee?
Well, I think it's hard, right? I mean, kind of what you were saying, right? He is the last selection in the second round. So I think his bargaining position is the worst out of these second round picks. But I do think because of what's going on around the league, and we'll get into some of the other issues that are happening around the league, but I think there's a good chance that he'll get higher than what has been historically accepted, but I'm not sure it'll be 100% guaranteed.
Yeah. And yeah, I think it's small beans at this point because it's just a question of a little extra guaranteed in the last year. And I did a little bit of research on like what percent of the time do second round picks stay with their team, and off the top of my head, if I recall, it was 75% through year 3, and then at that point that's when you would get an extension if you've shown that you're good. Obviously having a 4-year contract. So I don't necessarily think it's a big deal, but it's more of a precedent being set. And then who knows, in the future, does the top of the third round start to get more guarantees? So that's the battle that's being held. It looks like we got our first question that just showed up here from Ajani. How did you guys gain so much football knowledge? Did you have any experience on football staff? So I'll pass that over to you first.
Yeah, so my story is a little bit interesting. I played football in high school, but I fractured my spine, ended my football career. I had the opportunity to start as a recruiting intern at Penn State, and then I worked my way into a role where I was able to coach quarterbacks. So I was an student assistant coach at Penn State. I learned a lot there, which was really cool.
You just said that so casually. It just took me out of character there. But yeah, that's a tragic story. Maybe we can get more into that in another time. Sorry, I'll let you keep going.
No, you're totally okay. So I tried to absorb as much as I could. I played receiver and defensive back, but I chose quarterback to study because I really wanted to learn the game of football holistically. And I did a lot of analytics projects for Penn State. That's how I started off. And after that, I went to law school. and I built a linear regression algorithm that projected contract values. Surprise, surprise. I thought did a pretty good job until I met Eric, who came up with the best modeling program I've ever seen in my life, and definitely should shout that out there. But so I learned football from some really great minds under Penn State, and I love football, and I try to learn as much as I can, and that's where I'm here now.
Yeah, for me, like anyone, I played, youth football, and at the point, later stages of high school, starting to realize I'm not going to be big enough, fast enough, strong enough to have any kind of future in this game, but I still love the game. And, pretty much my only exposure at that point was recreationally watching the games and then playing Madden, which kind of got me familiarized with the players around the league. And I think, a lot of people who work in the league, analysts, even coaches, you'll hear about like Kellen Moore, for example. They were like big Madden players. Our Eagles Pinball Network compadre, Shane Haff, was like a tournament Madden player. But in the past few years, for people who don't know my background, I had a podcast called Sixers Science where we did some analytics in basketball. I actually had fortunate enough to like cover the team for a short time. But I kind of fell out of love with the game of basketball, but the entire time I've always loved football, and I had a renewed focus in the past, call it 2.5 years, to really try to learn as much as possible. That's when I got a fortunate opportunity to join up with Nick Waters at Philly Film Room, and he really taught me a lot about the game, especially like positional techniques wise, breaking down the film. And so I just started to go and seek out all the subject matter experts in each area of football, whether it was salary cap management, scheme breakdowns, positional techniques. There's so many elements of the game. I think that's one of the big appeals, because I'm someone who I really like to get invested in each area, try to be a jack of all trades and understand each aspect of the game. And in football, there's just so many different areas that you can get involved in. And, scouting, there's a bunch I haven't even named, sports science. Even something I've been interested in recently is in the equipment. Like, can you change around the equipment to get some kind of performance gains?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. There's some really cool things, and I think important with that is we're still learning too. And so honestly, I really appreciate this question because it's good to kind of share our backgrounds a little bit, and also just tell you we're trying to be the best versions of ourselves and keep learning. And we have a lot of stuff that we're excited to show with you guys and grow with you guys.
I'm glad you said that, Sam, because candidly, sometimes my content can come across as like I'm a know-it-all, and part of it is trying to expand our reach, try to establish credibility. But like you said, that's not the case at all. We're always learning. Literally, I'm going and researching stuff every single day. I'm going to be competing in the Big Data Bowl later this year. And I'm really trying to up my game in terms of statistics, data science, machine learning. That's all new stuff I have to learn in the context of football and player tracking data. So, you'll never learn it all. There are people who know more in the tip of their little finger than you'll ever know about a specific domain. But I think one of the aspects that we try to do is cover all of those bases, at least at a sufficient level that you can get good information and learn something. So you don't have to shop around, go to a bunch of different outlets. You can just come to us, and I think we'll have good information in whatever area of football you're interested in.
Absolutely. And I saw, I'm sorry if it's a Johnny or a Janie, I really appreciate that question, and I thank you for your answer. And if you are interested in coaching, you can reach out to me. I can, on my Twitter, and I'll give you my personal information. We can talk about it. I can tell you what I did. If you're interested, feel free to reach out.
And it's always funny. Like the other day, I kind of clicked through some of the people who are following me because, every 6 months or so, there are people who you don't even realize that slip through the cracks. And I see like there's all these college coaches and NFL analytics people, and I'm like, whoa, where did they come from? And then I'm pretty shameless. I just try to connect with these guys and see if they have something kind of to teach me that I can ask them about. And I think that's one of the beauties of social media. I really try to harness the power of that. Just go and put myself out there. The worst they can do is ignore you. You know what I mean? There's no real downside, but the upside's huge. You can learn things that people spent decades really learning themselves and extract those insights. And to me, that's how you kind of supercharge your knowledge. Do you want to get into our next topic as we're waiting? Oh, we got another question.
Well, we have another question. So.
Okay. Estone, do you want to read this one?
Yeah. So it's 2 questions. How do you guys view the Eagles' process at safety, trading CJ/GJ and using a second-round pick on Makuba? 2, likelihood that the Commanders do or don't extend Terry McLaurin. I think I really want to hear your answer to the second part. Can we start with that? Would that be okay?
Start with the second part?
Yeah, I'm very curious your input on this one.
Yeah. Well, anytime you get a question like likelihood somebody will do something, you try to put yourself in their shoes. And I'm thinking about their team, and it's like, okay, we have this rookie quarterback, and everyone knows you want to try to maximize your team while you have a good rookie quarterback because you're not allocating 20% of the cap to them. You've got this unique advantage where the most important position in the sport, you have someone who's good and you're not paying them. So then you got that extra 18+% of the cap that you can allocate to other positions. So you want to be aggressive. And you want to support that player directly through having a good receiver. After Debo, and I don't even necessarily think of him as a traditional receiver, the cupboard's pretty bare. You know, they've got a couple good tight ends, they got a receiving back. But you want, first off, Jaden Daniels, in my opinion, other than scrambling, his deep ball is his best ability. So you really want to have a good deep ball threat. Terry McLaurin's an unbelievable deep threat. He runs a 4.3 and change. He may be the best at tracking the ball in the entire NFL. And he's got good hands. He'll lay out, really good body control. So that's just a great connection. Now, I've recently projected his contract. It'll come in around $30 million. I'm sure the big fight will be on years. As you turn 30, especially at a position where it's predicated on athleticism, the teams are going to start to say, let's do a short term. And then the player's going to say, no, let's do 4+ years. And what ultimately will happen is, on paper, it'll be like a 4-year deal, but then the team will have an out after 2 or 3. And I actually did a post on Twitter I invite people to check out called Funny Money, which is there are contracts in the NFL where when it comes out, it's reported 4 years, $100 million. But then you look under the hood and the practical guarantee is like 40, 50 million, like just a fraction of that total contract. What does that tell you? That tells you the agent and the player wanted to represent like they're getting this big, long contract, but in all likelihood, they're not going to play out the last year or 2 of that contract. The team will probably just move on. And so you really want to look at what is that contract truly worth over the years where it was guaranteed? And then the math changes. That's what I project with McLaurin. My guess is he'd get like a 4-year contract, $120 million total. It'll be structured with 2 years fully guaranteed and like a partial in the third. But the likelihood that they extend him, I think, is 90+% overall. So curious just to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, listen, I think it's hard to follow up after you said that because I agree. I think something that they have to consider is roster construction, right? They're, I think, the oldest roster in the NFL right now. which is not necessarily a place you want to be unless you think that you can win it all, which obviously there's legitimate reason that they could think that because they were just in the NFC Championship. But I think that from a team perspective, you really do want to limit the amount of years. And I think you're right. I think that they'll try to make it so they can have an out after the second year, maybe the third year, where it just won't hurt their cap as much. And even if they have to eat it, I just think that they're going to have to do a soft reset soon. So I think you really have to think of that in advance. But I do think, in all likelihood, he will be re-signed. And I think it'd be a missed opportunity for, honestly, the organization, but also Jaden Daniels if they don't re-sign him.
And I just got to be transparent here. Looking at what they did last year coming in the year, they signed these aging vets with a rookie quarterback that we weren't necessarily how good he'd be coming out of the gates, with a offensive coordinator who's been lambasted for having stale, predictable offenses. And on paper, you're like, what is the strategy? It makes no sense. And they made it to the NFC Championship. So I think, in this era of ring culture where it's like, if you didn't win the Super Bowl, it's not a successful season. I don't agree with that at all, right? In fact, if you talk to the Eagles players, they talk repeatedly about how it was the journey, not the destination. Well, all these teams who made it like deep into the playoffs, they had a journey. To me, that is still a measure of success, and they far exceeded expectations. So I think it's very interesting. You brought it up that like they have to think about a soft reset because Bobby Wagner, he might have one more year left, right? Then a lot of their players, Ertz, McLaurin, even some of the guys on defense are starting to get a little bit older. So it's interesting to see how they're going to play it, but they got to put the hammer down while they have Daniels on that rookie contract. So my guess is they probably try to sign some like big name free agents, but it's one of these things where you can't depend on it because by the time you get there, either you're going to be priced out of that player because there's going to be all these teams who can't sell tickets who will pay a mint for some guy on the market, top guy on the market, or they just don't hit the market at all. I don't really think it's realistic to build through free agency. Now, there are people who will play devil's advocate and say, look at the Vikings. They haven't drafted, a lot of that defense, and they were one of the best defenses. So it's possible, but think about all the great value signings they made. Like, when they signed Van Ginkel, I was like, that is an unbelievable signing because he looked incredible the year before on the Dolphins. I liked Jonathan Greenard better than I liked Bryce Huff. That was a great signing. And also Blake Cashman. I absolutely loved his film when he was on the Texans. And they didn't pay top dollar for that. So maybe it's not spending on the premium free agents. Maybe it's signing like 3 or 4 of those mid-tiers and just hope your pro scouting is really good. But yeah, it's something I'm definitely keeping my eye on. Like, there's a lot of different ways that they could go. They could just clean house and start trying to build everything through the draft and just resign to the fact that they're going to have to pay Jaden Daniels, however much money it is once the salary cap is, when he signs his extension, it's probably going to be $328 million in that range. So you can just imagine what that contract's going to look like.
Yeah, especially when the cap goes up, which kind of actually interestingly brings us back to the first part of the question, right? I forgot. There was a 2-parter. Yeah, I mean, honestly, the Eagles have a story that they've kind of, promulgated, that they're essentially, they had to make this choice for the future. They obviously didn't see CJ GJ as a core player that they would put as much money as they want to in guys like Jalen Carter, Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, like guys that they're going to have to extend in the future. And that's the narrative that has been, put out there. Do you think it's something deeper, or do you think there was? What's your thoughts on it? I know, I think it's fun. We should bring it up. Your interaction with CJGJ, your infamous interactions with him. So I think you have a good perspective, and you can probably comment on this pretty well.
And for anyone who's not privy to this, it's not like I came out and grilled him. I just posted like all 22 clips of him messing up, kind of deal. And you could do that for any player. But the grander point there was, this is why they were okay with letting him go. They knew that he wanted more money. Remember, his cap hit that first season was like $2 million or something like that. Like, he had the minimum base and then that prorated signing bonus, which was not even that big. So, in my opinion, I mean, remember, Howie's not someone who goes into the draft desperately needing a position. They like to actually fill holes before that time. And so the fact that they were willing to go into the draft with only having Sidney Brown penciled in as that safety, that should be pretty telling. Now, in my opinion, they probably knew they were going to take safety. They probably looked and they're like, there's 6 guys here we like. And so they pretty much picked, in my opinion, Fangio's choice. And I don't know if this is a direct quote or many reporters have alluded to this, but when it comes to defensive players, I mean, Howie is listening to Fangio. Like, this is the kind of skill set I like. This is the direct player I like. And Fangio, his history is playing a lot of smaller safeties. And what does Mukuba do well? Well, he's got cat-like quickness, and he's got unbelievable zone eyes. So he's able to look, across the field, even in his peripheral vision, see routes, anticipate where they're going to go on the field, and break in front of them. And when you're playing like that quarters structure, you're basically, you're an interior quarters safety. So there's kind of 2 things you're going to do. Either you're going to take away deep post, or you're going to rob crossers. And I think that's where they really like Mukuba. One of the things last year is when teams played 3-by-1, 3 receivers to one side, 1 receiver to the other side, a coverage that they like to lean on is tricks. So that's a tag. It can go on a lot of different coverages, but it's a tag for the weak side safety to look across the field at the number 3 receiver. So if you count from the outside, number 1, 2, 3, that's the most interior receiver. And if they go vertical and across the field, well, you're picking them up. And this alleviates the linebacker from having to carry that player deep. Something we saw the Eagles get gashed by in week 1 when Jayden Reed went for the 70-yard touchdown. In cover 3 match, that linebacker on that play, Nakobe Dean, he could be asked to cover Jayden Reed 50 yards downfield. That's obviously not ideal. So they started to lean on that heavily. But if you watch, you'll notice that Reed Blankenship played the trick safety way more often than CJ Gardner-Johnson did. And this is because teams are biased in their 3-by-1s to have the 3 receivers set to be to the quarterback's right. So it'll be interesting to see if they have a little bit more flexibility, because if they like Blankenship down in the box more and they think Mukuba can play the post and play that tricks role, you might see safeties flipping a little bit more. Now, that's something that's been talked about even with the cornerbacks. Like, in minicamp, they had Quinyon go to the opposite side because quarterbacks throw to the right more often than they do to the left. So maybe you put your lesser corner on the left. So, there's just a lot of elements there. I like Mukuba. The number one thing I said when they drafted him was he was 185 4, I believe, at the combine.
Yeah.
And I'm like, he's got to get the weight up. The reason is because he plays really aggressively. So, it's fine to be a little bit on the lighter side, but not when it's coupled with a guy who's throwing his body in there with reckless abandon. To be able to take those hits, especially over the course of an NFL season, I want some more meat on that bone. The good news is that in his pro day, he weighed in around 195, which I was thrilled about. So overall, the fact that they can save money, get a guy who's probably less volatile of a player than Gardner Johnson, and has an ability to hit on the high end, could be like a 3 to 5 interception guy. I like that process. The small bit of concern is that he likes to kind of dive at guys' legs, and if you're the last line of defense and you don't slow down the ball carrier, look out. That could be trouble. And, Gardner Johnson, for his faults, he would lay the boom even on some bigger players. Like, people will remember that 4th down stop against Bijan. He's capable of that. Makuba, not as much. So, there's trade-offs with anything, but overall, I'm looking pretty optimistically at it.
Did you see CJ actually talked about that 4th down stop against Bijan on his most recent podcast? It was kind of cool.
I mean,
he went through his thought process on it, which I could appreciate. This is all not to say that CJ was not an essential part of the team, and he may be missed. I mean, that there is that component of it. But if you want to understand the Eagles' process, I think Eric outlined it pretty well. The only thing I'd add to it is that you also have the ability, and not necessarily you have to, but you could put Cooper DeJean back there too, worst case scenario. There are ways you can mitigate if, Makuba is not ready. I don't think that would be the case, but it's possible.
That's a great point. That is a good insurance plan. I don't necessarily know if the Eagles traded Gardner Johnson knowing that they have that option. It's a good point. And Makuba, he has flexibility. He can play in the nickel. He did that at Clemson. I don't think that's his best position. You're asked to mirror a player out of the slot, and I don't necessarily think that's he's best suited for that, but he's capable of it.
And DeJean is obviously better at that, so it may not be optimal usage. I'm just saying that they have some optionality and can play around a little bit to figure it out. Now, if he doesn't report to camp, because of this contract issue, we get into a really interesting part. And I think that's kind of a fun way to take this, right? Like, if he isn't able to come to camp, what would you say is the backup plan, Eric? What would you do?
I'll be honest. I don't think that's a realistic possibility. He'll probably go down to the day before camp, and then just the Eagles will cave at that point. You're a Super Bowl team, you're such a healthy organization, you're not gonna let that stir the pot. That's probably why his agent is advising him to wait it out. So if you want me to force me to answer it, I would say they'll just stick Sidney Brown there and then just wait it out.
That's what I assumed you were gonna say.
Yeah, there was one other thing I was gonna mention, which is a mea culpa. One of the things I talked about when DeJean was drafted was that I thought he would struggle matching quicker slots, especially in man coverage. But they just didn't ask him to do that very often. A few times when he did, against Adam Thielen, a couple snaps against Chase, although he had an amazing game, he did get beat. So it's not like my concerns were totally invalid. Obviously, he surpassed my expectations in year one. But when just in the zone match stuff, he's unbelievable. In fact, I'd go so far as to say I don't think we've ever seen a rookie nickel corner with his coverage IQ in the history of the league. And that's not hyperbole. So, yeah,
I'd agree with that.
If he can't, perfectly match some kind of shake route, and he gives up a little bit of separation against, some of the best, quickest slot receivers in the NFL, am I going to cry about that? No. because he does everything at such an exceptional level. But, you know, I think that's part of Fangio's genius is he doesn't ask his players to do things that are going to put them in compromising positions. That leads me.
I love this as a segue because
two
questions have to do with defense and Fangio to some extent. So I think we can, if you're ready, I think we can go right. Also, go Birds to E-Money because we appreciate any comment, honestly. And we appreciate everyone listening and viewing. But I think, would you like to read this one or you want me to get it?
What are your expectations for Kelee Ringo's performance this year? I'll let you go.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I feel like maybe someone should check out your video. You went pretty in-depth on Ringo earlier in the offseason. It might have been like right as the offseason started. And you have pretty good expectations for him. You think he's going to be pretty good. I tend to agree. I think he's going to be in a decent situation to succeed. And I think he has the skill set to succeed. Is he limited? Yeah, he has some limitations. But it's going to be hard to find a second corner that isn't limited on the outside. So I think he'll do pretty well. I think, you know, what we've seen from him is probably what we're going to get. I think another year under this defense, he might, you know, have some IQ, you know, bumps and might be able to make some better football decisions. But I think what he's done has been pretty good, and I think it's what we're going to get.
Yeah, the way I see this, like anytime you're trying to predict the future, is there's so much randomness between who are the specific opponents they're going against. Are the quarterbacks healthy? What's the situation in the game? What are the coverages they're playing? So as opposed to like pretending like you know all of that information, I like to just kind of hone in on what he's good at and what he's not good at. And in as those situations present themselves, you'll see how that materializes. And for me, if he's asked to carry routes vertically down the field and run in a straight line, he's awesome. If he's asked to play, 8 to 10 yards off, have good eye discipline, and click and close on anything underneath, and tackle physically, he's great. When he's moved into a condensed formation and he's against a quick player and he's trying to match a rub route or a whip route or an in-breaker, that's where he will struggle. His lateral quickness is not quite there. Sometimes his main tendency is to get impatient and open up early. So if you open up early and then someone breaks, you're late to be able to mirror that break. So that's kind of how I see it. One of the interesting developments is last year, regardless of how the offense presented themselves, they'd be fine leaving Slay or Quignon on an island. And essentially, in a lot of these zone match coverages, you can be in what they call man everywhere they go when you're the isolated
it's
corner.
crazy. Our next question
that's man coverage.
Our next question asks about that, actually, specifically, which is kind of cool. So they're blending so well.
Think about how nice it is as a defensive coordinator where you don't even need to have some kind of, if the stud lines up here, we're playing this coverage. If they line up over here, this, and they have those coverages, luggage, Zeus, etc. And in future Vic Fangio lessons of the week, I'll get into some of those designer coverages to take away the studs. But you don't have to call those when you have two good corners. Darius Slay was a great player last year, unheralded in my opinion. I think there was a few plays early on, first 4 or 5 weeks, where he looked bad, but he cleaned that up quickly. So, no, I don't think Ringo is going to be as good as Slay. Slay's just got that wealth of experience. He's got some of the fastest hips you'll ever see, whereas that's one of the weaknesses of Ringo. So all that leads me to say is that going to change their coverage tendencies? One of the things you do to insulate a weaker corner is you have a safety over top. So you'll have them playing a cloud technique or basically squatting on anything underneath. And then if the receiver goes vertical, well, then you're kind of just hovering underneath and everything else the safety's getting over top. So it's a bracket is kind of when you have two players on one receiver, and this is just a different version of that where it's kind of underneath and over top. So when they play these split field coverages, cover 6, cover 8, they're doing that. So do I think they're going to play it where they play a half to Ringo's side more often? Yeah, I do think they're going to do that because that just allows him to play with more confidence and not worry about giving up a touchdown. A lot of times when corners struggle, it's not because they can't do what is asked. It's because they're worried about giving up a big play, and that bleeds into the rest of their game. So when you can kind of insulate them with that safety, they can play a lot better, especially on those underneath routes, in breakers, and all kinds of stuff like that. In the best case scenario, he would be able to match anything from any receiver. And so that's kind of how I would characterize it. I don't think he's going to be a bad corner. And if he does struggle, I think the backup option's really solid in Adoree Jackson.
Yeah, I agree. I think we should go to the next question, which is basically talking about almost exactly what you were talking about to an extent. It's a little bit more nuanced. But does Vic not flip travel his corners or safeties? Why? Is Ringo the Meg in the 3-by-1 defense?
Okay, so he doesn't. Remember, Vic Fangio's been in the league for 40 years. Was there a time where he had his top corner shadow the best receiver? Yes. Has he done that in the last couple of years? No. And when you have these offenses where they're putting their stud in the slot, they're playing condensed formations, they're using all kinds of wacky motions and shifts to change the passing strength. One of the benefits of having that too high shell that's static pre-snap is that you don't have to mutate that much to be able to stay with good leverage against those various looks that the offense presents itself. So by having your corners run around, you're giving away your disguise and you're potentially losing the advantage that you're getting from that too high shell. That, to me, that's a big reason why he does it. And also, it's nice if you just master your one side and you play every snap the whole season from that one side. You just via the reps, you're really starting to hone in on like, what does it look like? What kind of, when they release from this side, your anticipation levels are better. What does it look like as the quarterback throws a pass? When I'm tracking over this shoulder, what does that feel like? That sensation. So the moves are more consistent down to down. Whereas if I move to the other side of the formation, imagine like doing that for an edge rusher. Now your first contact is with the opposite arm. Now you're planting off your opposite leg. That's a totally different sensation. So I think, there's a lot of elements to it. To answer the second part, is Ringo the Meg in 3-by-1 defense? There's a lot of different ways to handle 3-by-1. But there's definitely calls that exist. One of them is book. So book is a tag on quarters coverage where the isolated corner is in Meg. So even if the guy goes underneath and shallow, so like a shallow drag, the corner still has them. Most other coverages, if the outside corner, if the guy there over goes shallow and underneath, they're delivering them to the nickel or the weak side linebacker, just depending on where those guys are. But yeah, there are some circumstances where it is Meg. More often than not, in the zone match coverages, it's called mod, which is outside and deep. So if the release goes beyond the level of the nickel, so you're talking 4 to 6 yards, or the route goes to the outside, you're picking it up. If it stays short of 5 yards and goes inside, then you're delivering it to the interior receivers. So hopefully that answers that. There's a few more questions. Did you have anything more you wanted to say on that before we went to the next?
No, let me take this next one though.
Yeah. What I'll ask, wasn't Coop top 3 in man defense? Was that because he wasn't asked to do it that much?
So I pulled up some PFF stats while you were talking. So basically, he is, with the 50% threshold, he is third for yards per reception in man. And if you look, he was 36th in man coverage when he was asked to do it. So he had 606 coverage snaps, 155 of them were in man. So, and that's 25.4% of his snaps were in man. So I think you can kind of make your own conclusions on that, but he did pretty well on that relative basis when he was asked to do man, and he was asked to do it around a quarter of his snaps.
One of the things I'm interested to do is, like, if we did a plot of, let's say, once Coop was in the lineup, what percentage in man coverage, like, what was the target distribution? You know, we know they didn't throw at Quinyon much. My guess is the weak side linebacker and Slay. I think those two guys probably got a ton of targets. In fact, I think I know the stats, and I remembered Nakobe Dean gave up quite a bit of yards, and Slay got targeted a lot. That's not, I'm not passing a value judgment on those. It's just the facts that they were thrown at a lot. And when you're thrown at a lot, you're going to give up more yards. That's why we like rate statistics, because they adjust for the volume. But yeah, that's one of the things in defense is, like, to a certain extent, you're only as strong as your weakest link in the secondary. And the Eagles didn't really have a big weak link. And, you know, in that the too high structure, are you asking the safety to play a lot of man match? Not really. Where we did see that is in the red zone, and Gardner Johnson got roasted. That's just the facts. So do I think next year, maybe, you know, I remember early on they have a red zone coverage, cover 9 red. So it's modified rules for the red zone. And they were wildly successful with it. Teams started to catch on, like it happens in the league, right? There's amazing advanced scouting. And then they started to lean a lot more on cover 1, and it didn't hold up that well. So I'd like to see them kind of have a little bit more diversity in the red zone, especially low red zone coverages. I think their high red zone was fantastic. But once teams kind of got below the 6 or 7, I thought the pass coverage was pretty dicey. So it's a tough situation in general. But the worst thing you want to do is, like, get a slow-footed defensive back manned up on, like, some stud receiver. That just makes it too easy on the offense. Like, I'd rather them try to fit it. I remember Rams had that touchdown, the Higbee, but they fit it in between Bond and I think Gardner Johnson in the smallest window. Like, I'd rather give that up than, like, some of those ones where it was like Olave just dusting CJ to the corner and having the easiest pitch and catch ever kind of deal.
Yeah, and I think Fangio would prefer being beat that way as opposed to the second way he said, for sure.
Yeah, and it's not anything groundbreaking. Like, teams play cover 1 in the low red zone because they don't want to have a coverage bust and because they don't want to have someone just throw an easy little hitch route in between your zones. But I think there's a middle ground between there where you don't expose yourself to, like, rub routes or receivers from condensed alignments just running outside and just getting free releases, rub routes, or running some kind of, shake route to get them open out wide. I think there's ways that you can kind of play like banjo coverage where it's man, but depending on where the guy releases, you're having a different guy pick him up. There are a lot of different mechanisms like that.
Yep.
All right. For anyone just joining, this is an Ask Us Anything episode. So whether you're on Twitter, or YouTube, or anywhere else, you can just fire those questions in the chat. So far, really great questions. Yeah, we appreciate that. So before we get any more, did you have another topic queued up that you wanted to get into?
Oh, yeah. Let's do that. Something I've been really
excited
to talk about.
We have another one. We had another one come in.
That's fine.
What battles are you most excited for in camp, and which are you most concerned about, if any? I'll let you take this one.
Yeah, so I'm really excited about the depth rolls. A lot of the depth roll battles. Like, I really want to see which, tackles make the roster. I really want to see, between the guys drafted and the undrafted free agents, I really want to see, who gets a roster spot. I think that's really an exciting battle. I know it's probably not the sexiest one, but it's an exciting battle because I think that could be the future of the team. I mean, Lane Johnson's getting older, and I kind of want to see where that goes. Concerned, I'm a little bit concerned about the guard battle. I think Steen is probably going to win it, but I know on Inside the Birds, I just talked about it with Jeff Mosher. We talked, and he said that that battle could be really interesting because there's a dark horse there, and that would be one of the veterans that they signed who used to be on the team. That I'm blanking on his name right now.
Pryor?
You know which guard that Pryor, yeah. So Pryor, could be a dark horse there that someone you should very much look out for. And then obviously is Green, who they traded GJ for. And so I'm a little concerned there, but it's also a really exciting battle, I'd say. Because, look, to be honest with you, if the replacement guard can perform league average, you feel pretty good still about that line. And I think, Steen has done pretty well in his limited snaps. He hasn't allowed a single sack. He hasn't been credited against it or a single sack in all of his playing time. And so I think it's really exciting. And honestly, I personally would love to see Steen, get that opportunity because I think he'll do pretty well.
Recently, I've been trying to up my game on offensive line play, just trying to understand the nuances better. One of the adages that keeps coming up is, as a unit, you can patch one hole, but you can't patch two. And the Eagles have like Pro Bowl or better caliber players at all the other positions. That gives you a lot of confidence. When Steen played last year, you didn't notice him for the most part. So I feel fine about that. Battles I'm most excited for in camp, I think edge rusher is an interesting one because you have a lot of guys vying for that designated pass rusher role. Is it Ojulari? He's had the best sustained success in the pass rush department. Uche, he's had the highest high with his 11 sack season. Antoine Powell-Ryland, who played in the same conference as Ezeraku, also had 16 sacks, is like 250 plus. And the reason he fell is because he didn't quite show that level of athleticism on tape, and they said he was allergic to the run. But there's some interesting pass rush capabilities potentially in there, and I actually think he will make the 53. And edge rusher is just a fun position, so I'm interested to see that. Which am I most concerned about? Obviously, cornerback, it's such an important position. People know I'm optimistic about Ringo at this point, but that doesn't mean I think it's a guarantee that he's going to be good. The insurance policy, though, is still strong with Adoree Jackson. Linebacker, that's got to be a concern early in the year. If Jahad Campbell takes several weeks to get going, and remember, even once he's cleared to play, that's still a complicated defense he's got to get up to speed on.
I'm excited about that, though. I think Smile Mondin and Trotter, the combination of the two, could be a nice patchwork there. And I feel like you feel pretty comfortable putting them out there, especially with the other pieces on the defense. But I get what you're saying, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I don't necessarily want to crap on any players, but I do worry about Trotter. The size and speed concerns are real. His IQ is great. That's not a concern. And you can play faster, if you have great instincts and great film habits and you can anticipate what's happening. You can play faster than what you would be timed at. But I do see him being small and getting washed away by, offensive linemen working up to the second level. Now, the way that Fangio plays along the defensive line mitigates that concern to some extent, trying to keep the linebackers clean, eating up combo blocks with those behemoths inside. But it is a concern for me. And wide receiver 3.
I thought you were going to bring this up.
Dotson's a fine player. The problem is he doesn't fit what the Eagles need out of that position. He's an intermediate route runner when they would be better served. And the other thing that I should mention is he's played predominantly on the outside because they wanted to put Smith in the slot more often, which I'm all in favor of. But you're going to put a guy who's I think sub 6 foot, sub 200 pounds on the outside, who's not a burner, can't really block, isn't a gadget player who can catch screens or do end arounds. And it's
he's listed 5'11", 184.
Yeah. So that's just not conducive to success. If you had someone who ran amazing clear outs or proposed some kind of deep threat, was able to be a punishing blocker, trying crack back blocks for Saquon on tosses or screens to A.J. Brown, or they could actually do jet motion. We saw some success doing end arounds to Smith in the playoffs, but that's not a great role for Smith. You don't want to expose him on run plays. If they had a guy who could do those, ideally all 3 of them, but if just 2 of those 3, I think that would be just so much better ROI on that position. And Dotson, if he went to a team where they threw those 15-yard speed outs and big digs, then I think that would be awesome.
So I'm just going to, we try to be objective here, but I will admit I have a very strong bias when it comes to Jahan Dotson because, I coached at Penn State and I know Han pretty well. And it's hard for me not to root for him. And I understand what Eric's saying, but I think they could find more success with him this year, with another year on the team, building chemistry, with honestly building with a new offensive coordinator, you can make more plays designed to help use his skill set better. And so maybe I'm cautiously optimistic with him in that third position. And I feel like he'll make another jump this year. And again, I'm disclosing my bias. I love Jahan Dotson as a person, and that definitely is impacting this a little bit. But honestly, I'm cautiously optimistic. I'll put it there.
I already love same-day delivery with Shipt, but it's so much better since I signed up for Target Circle 360. Why? Because I no longer pay price markups from the majority of stores through Shipt. Only a handful of alcohol retailers and items don't count. That means no markups on groceries, pet food, even home goods and makeup. So to recap, I have more time to catch up on life while someone shops for me, and I spend less. It's a win-win. Order now at shipt.com/360. Terms apply.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's just last year, they didn't even... Can you hear me?
You're good now. Yeah, you're good now.
They didn't even have a lot of designer concepts for AJ and Devontae. So just this idea that...
I wasn't saying designing the concepts to him.
Yeah.
I was saying that they could figure out a way to use him more efficiently. You don't necessarily have to use
I don't see the point. Like, if I would rather just throw to the All-Pros and run it to Saquon than, like, try to get him involved. Like, personally, I would put Calcaterra on the field over him. I would put Ben Van Sumeren on the field over him. And the other problem is he's not a good insurance policy if one of the top two dogs go down. He can't play X receiver. He can't get off press. I mean, I watched the film. He's getting shoved into other people's routes. So it's like if Dotson is in the slot and Calcaterra is as an attached tight end and they're on the same side of the field, they're getting shoved into the direct area of the field, nullifying both of their routes. Happened repeatedly last year. I will say this. Like, we saw in the end of the year with McKee, they're running some more, like, true drop-back style offense. And, like, they're actually throwing, like, 10-yard outs, and Dotson looked good. Yeah, he's pretty good at that. That's his skill set. But that's not really what Hurts runs. And if you want to hit those concepts, you got to hit that back foot, and the ball's got to be out. And I mean, we've seen it now for 5+ years. Like, that's not really the type of quarterback Hurts is. So, well, I think maybe we'll agree to disagree on that one. I just can't envision him getting more than like 400 yards. To me, that's like the theoretical max. But obviously, I'd be thrilled.
But how much
if he
do you
had
really
more.
want a wide receiver 3 to get? Right? I mean, like that's pretty in this offense. I feel like historically, that's probably where they've been. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, last year there was like 5-6 week periods where he would average like 2 targets or less for that whole span. And it wasn't because they're not looking at him. I got to be honest. Like, he was not open. If you look at the tracking data, he ranked as the second least open receiver in the entire league. So sometimes you're just running guys out there as influence routes to just hold down zone defenders so that you can work your studs. And part of it was that. But a lot of it was just like him just kind of like jogging aimlessly out there. But yeah, you know, I just don't think it's a perfect match for what we're trying to do. All right, we'll take like one or two more questions, and then we'll wrap it up here. Oh, this is
what can Fangio do
question.
against ISO and Black? Is that adjustment worth it?
That's such a funny way of phrasing it. Like, he's already presupposing the adjustment, and is it worth it? The thing I think is emblematic here is last year, a lot of after the first couple of weeks, the Eagles were not tested a lot on the ground. They faced a ton of teams that had completely inept run games, or some teams that had good run games that kind of got away from it, whether they thought they could pass better or they got behind, etc. So I think maybe like the perception of the Eagles' run defense was that it was better than maybe it truly was, because we never saw it get exposed. It's after the Atlanta game. And, you know, from very well-respected analysts saying like Eagles' run defense was unbelievable, top in the league. And if you look at the analytics, it was. But I don't necessarily think there was a team that really committed to that. When you're playing light boxes and you're trying to soak up blockers with Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis, and you're having Zach Bond and Nakobe Dean run through gaps and make stops in the backfield, that's great. But if it's not working, now you start to have players leaking into the third level of your defense, and you better hope those safeties can tackle. So I think there's a possibility, especially early on in the season, before they have their star linebackers in there, that they might be a little bit more exposed to the run game. You specifically talked about interior runs. What they like to do is they'll present what is called the bubble, which is when your defensive linemen are, multiple gaps apart, there's a space in there that the offense is trying to run through. And so you have to cancel those gaps post-snap. So, you can do that through stunts, slants, gap exchange. There's a lot of different mechanisms to handle that. And the Eagles did a good job at that. And I actually think they're more vulnerable to outside runs than inside runs. The one time they're vulnerable to inside runs is some of the run fits when you're in that too high structure and you're not spinning a safety down post snap, is sometimes that deep safety is responsible for filling like the B gap. And we saw there was a big run by Josh Jacobs last year when Tristan McCollum was in there. He came in, he was responsible for the B gap. He came flying in. Who did he deck? Zach Bond. Took him completely out of the play, and Jacobs ran for like 30. So that's where the interior runs get dicey, especially if you're having like Makuba try to come downfield against a big back. I would be concerned about that. The saving grace there is Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis are unbelievable. Jordan Davis is
that would have been my answer,
unbelievable run defender. All right, I'll just turn it over to you. I mean, what I was just going to say is, like, Jordan Davis, even when he's not making the play, he's taking up so much space. It's insane. And he doesn't get knocked back. So when there's no push and you're just able to, like, if you're just, someone else did that. If you're just able to wall off the offensive linemen, they get no vertical push. There's just all this congestion in the backfield.
More fireworks.
So, yeah, that really helps. And that's why they should probably re-sign Jordan Davis, because it's maybe as easy as it sounds to replace a run defender. I don't think you're going to get a guy of that caliber very easily. So,
yeah.
What do you think?
I mean, that literally, I was just going to say 2 words. Jordan Davis. That was literally going to be my answer, because, I mean, that is where he excels. And I definitely think you're right. He takes up space. Even if he's not making the tackle, I mean, he's making a significant push to make it easier for his guys to make the tackle. I mean, that's where his value is. And that's the reason, well, it's part of the reason he was a first-round pick. And, that would have been 100% my answer, for sure.
Yeah. For me, like, Davis, if you told me he was going to command $18 million, I'd probably pay $18 million, unless some kind of stud run defender was like sitting right there for me in the draft. But those, I mean, guys that big who have that mobility even don't grow on trees. A lot of people have asked, will he take a bigger role in the pass rush department? And I'm curious to hear your thoughts. For me,
yeah,
you go first. You go first.
Well, first off, yeah, I think his conditioning and commitment to getting in the best shape that he can be opens that door up, right? And that, and also Milton Williams leaving. I mean, there is opportunities for him to play on more pass downs. I think that is totally plausible. That being said, I still think he's going to be a rotational piece that is best going to be leveraged in run situations. I do think there will be some situations where he'll have more of an opportunity to pass rush. But again, I don't really think that's necessarily his strong point. And I think that you kind of have a decent amount of that where you have that strength with Moro Ojomo, or, you can kind of move the rotation around a little bit. And I think there will be more of an opportunity for sure. But at the same time, again, the way you want to like leverage that rotation, I'm not sure it's optimal doing it that way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and for me, I think his pass rush opportunities will be on 1st and 10. It just makes no sense to put him out there on 3rd and long, because you have Moro Ojomo, who I've identified as a potentially lethal pass rusher. You have Ty Robinson, who is a pinball type pass rusher who can align anywhere from nose tackle to a 7 tech. So they have great options there. You could even put Jalix Hunt inside and then put one of those speed guys, Ojulari, outside.
You think they'll do that? That's actually really interesting. I didn't thought about that, but that's super interesting.
Well, the only reason I would say no is because they have like 4 capable interior defensive linemen. But if the matchup makes sense, yes. It's
what
amazing
would it take
to me
to do that. Like what matchup would trigger that?
Yeah, a really like clunky footed guard who like plays too upright, because Jalen Hunt, remember, everyone knows this, he was a safety, really good movement ability. But the other thing that I think less people know is that he's got a really powerful long arm. So if you have a guard who's playing more upright and then he can get in their chest, he could just collapse that pocket, and then obviously has the ability to like pursue and take down the quarterback if he's able to get in the backfield. That's a situation that he could play inside. The counter argument would be like Ojomo would also excel against a player like that because he plays with unbelievable pad level and he's really violent and laterally shifty off the snap. So that's where it becomes like, okay, why are we even putting Hunt there? But maybe just like as a change up. I think they do have a lot of versatility in their front. Other than Nolan Smith, they're like Carter can play on the edge. It shocked me to see Jordan Davis play better as a 3 tech than he did as a nose, I thought. Now they didn't play base. He didn't play. They didn't play a lot of base last year. Could that percentage of 5 down linemen, or it's the 3 down linemen and then they have the 2 stand-ups, could that go up? Yes, I think they played 9 or 10% last year. Could that creep up to 12%? I think it could. Teams are not going to be thrilled to like spread out and try to like test this secondary. It's a good secondary, a lot of good coverage players. They're really the back 7. But are they going to line up in like multiple tight ends and try to like take advantage of these like smaller edge rushers and linebackers and potentially safeties that don't necessarily want to tackle? Well, let me rephrase. Makuba wants to tackle. He just struggles with tackling. So I do, like, if I was an offensive coordinator, I probably would, there's times where I'd want to go heavy against the Eagles and really kind of stress the edges. So, yeah.
Nice.
Anything to add on that?
Nah, I think you did a good job on it.
All right, last one, and we'll get out of here, is, do you like Calcaterra? I like him as a receiver, and he's a great sniffer.
I think this was originally posted as a response when we were, engaged in that Jahan Dotson battle earlier, and you said, I'd rather have Calcaterra. I remember as soon as you said that, this comment came in, so I think this is in response to that.
Did you want to take this?
It's a response, I think, to you, to what you were saying about.
Oh, I got you.
You prefer Calcaterra over Jahan Dotson.
Yeah, I mean, I do like Calcaterra. He tries as a blocker. He doesn't have the play strength to block. He can't block, unless what you're asking him to do is like get in the way kind of deal. Now, obviously, he's much more impactful than Dotson would be if you're asking him to do that. When you say sniffer, generally what that's referring to is a tight end or H-back style player who's off the line of scrimmage. Often you'll like kind of use him to change the passing strength. You can run like split zone action where the guy's kind of coming across the formation. Yes, I love him in that role because you can get easy pitch and catch, and he's good at yak. Like he's a good runner in the open field. Overall, I really like his receiving chops. If we're talking about like guys not getting targeted when we brought up Dobson, to me, a guy who you could actually realistically increase their target share with effectiveness is Calcaterra. He had that unbelievable highlight catch last year, people will remember. But yeah, I like him as a receiver. I like him as a ball carrier, tight end screens. The people remember it was 3 years ago. They probably won't remember. The Eagles had this slide package, and they would use a multitude of players, play action or like kind of a run action, have a guy working across, and then you just hit him in stride to the flat. It's the easiest play in football. It's like guaranteed yardage. You know, that's the kind of stuff I love him on. Less so like seam shots or something like that. Although they did have a couple of those last year. I can remember the Bengals game. They had a 20-yard seam shot that was beautiful. So, yeah, overall, I like him.
It goes to what you were saying earlier, right? Like one of the things that you want that you don't necessarily have with Dotson is that horizontal stretch as well as like a vertical stretch. And, you know, that's one of the things. I think that's kind of what you were alluding to in that conversation that we had earlier, is that you want to be able to stretch the defense horizontally as well. And Calcaterra just does a better job. He has the tools to stretch horizontally. So I think that's like perhaps what you're saying.
And he's a bigger target, right? Like, to be honest, Hurts, we can all admit, is like, he's not quite as punctual from getting the ball out as the guy's breaking as like a guy like Joe Burrow. That's fine. We won the Super Bowl. But that starts to matter when you talk about what receiver they're going to. When the guy's a little bit bigger, catch radius is a little bit bigger, and you're a tiny bit later, I think the margin for error is a lot bigger. Whereas you're trying to fit it in the tiniest window ever, potentially up against the sideline or in between zones to a small guy, I just think that's not a recipe for success. So, all right, I think we'll wrap it up here. We had so many great questions. I believe next week.
Will you indulge me for 1 second?
Absolutely.
I kind of want to do something really quick.
Definitely.
I want to rapid fire you, and you're restricted to 10 seconds per answer. You ready for this?
Yeah.
Okay. First off, I want your reaction on the Eagles Super Bowl rings that officially came out today. Have you seen it?
Yeah. I was lukewarm on them.
Yeah? What do you not like? Remember, 10 seconds. Got to go quick on this.
Yeah, like I would have liked more contrast, maybe like a more darker element to contrast with the silver. And the two trophies was cool, but I thought the imagery could have been like a little bit cleaner.
Sure. Shane Gillis at the ESPYs. Thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I try to stay out of the political stuff, but I thought it was really funny. Overall, I think he's kind of like, he's funny, but he's a little bit of a bully. That's kind of his shtick. But I thought a lot of the jokes were funny.
Mike Williams' retirement. Surprised?
The least surprising retirement of all time. A guy who's always been good when he's on the field, just rarely on the field.
Okay, and then Cam Newton leaving Jalen Hurts off of his top 10 list.
Yeah, I mean, anything Cam Newton does, it's irrelevant to me. Also, ranking quarterbacks, it doesn't really matter to me. It's a fun thought exercise. It's also an impossible thing unless you acutely define the criteria. So,
Agreed.
Yeah.
But then Des Bryant coming to Jalen Hurts' defense. Shocked?
A little bit. Yeah. I thing is, though, and I've seen this with Des, like, I don't think he's a guy who necessarily, like, he'll keep it real, like, no matter who you are. So, yeah, I guess that's cool.
Okay, that was my rapid fire. Just thought it'd be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So, did you want to do a teaser? I don't know if it's going to be next week or the following, but we have some cool interviews kind of lined up. We don't know necessarily what order they're going to go into, but we got some really cool people.
Yeah. Should we keep it under wraps, or do you think should we give them a little tease?
Okay, well, without saying the name, why don't we kind of tell them what some of their credentials are?
Sure. I have one that is a former collegiate offensive line coach.
And I have one who is written many books about NFL offensive schemes, as well as another one who has a very large following in the football sphere, who's an expert in defensive coverages.
Basically, you guys you're going to get some good content coming out soon. We hope you learn a lot, because we're going to learn a lot in these too.
All right, till next time.